4,000 years of history, 4 different quarters, and we're going to try,
An important gate.
and an important gate. And so I have a very small amount of time to show you my kind of circuit of Jerusalem. But before we get started, I want us all to be on the same page. Okay, we all come from different backgrounds, we all have different religions, with different faith, different everything. So let's make sure that we're all on the same page. So I have, and I want someone to time me, 3.5 minutes for 4,000 years. Are you guys ready?
For
Okay.
3,000 what?
3.5 minutes for 4,000 years of an intro to Jerusalem.
Okay.
Okay? I'm opening brackets of the director's comments, right? I said we're gonna go back and forth so I can tell you the backstage. I want to tell you the backstage. The reason I'm doing this is just to give kind of like a very, very swift info of Jerusalem so that my group is all on the same page and kind of like to make the group feel this is a big city I'm going to see. Okay, this is exciting. There's so many layers of history right now, and that's the vibe I want to give the group before we walk into Jerusalem. I'm closing my brackets, back to my guiding hat. When we talk about a capital, Jerusalem is the capital of Israel for over 3,000 years. Every country in this world has a capital that was chosen for a specific reason. We need to find out why Jerusalem was chosen for this reason, and the only source that we have to look at is the Bible. Some of us believe in the Bible, some of us don't. We're going to use it as a traditional book that we take stories from. Okay? Open brackets of, you don't know who's in your group. My perspective is Jewish. My mother comes from a Catholic family, so I have a Christian perspective too. I know I have Muslims over here, so I don't want to offend anyone if I tell a story that has to do with one thing or the other. So I kind of differentiate and say traditional. Okay, it's traditional to say because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. You have to be Switzerland. Okay? Nobody can know my political view. I don't want even people to know if, how I feel about certain things. I'm happy for people to know I'm a Jew. Okay, because that's the perspective that I'm bringing into this group. And my personal story that my mother converted from Catholicism, that always adds some spice to who I am. So I'm starting to bring my story into this. Close brackets. According to the Bible, King David chose Jerusalem as the capital. And why did King David choose Jerusalem as the capital? If we go back to our biblical stories, if you remember them from elementary school, we know that the land of Israel was divided into all the different tribes. We have the tribe of Reuben and the tribe of Simon and the tribe of Judea and Benjamin, and they all had their area, their territory. We know that we have the Ark, and in the Ark is the covenant, the law, the 10 commandments of the Israelites, according to the Old Testament Bible. And that Ark was mobile, okay? It didn't have a home. And King David wants to find a home for the law, for the commandments, for something that can unify everybody. And he finds a place that was neutral. It didn't belong to any one of the tribes. A tiny little city called Jebus, in Hebrew Yavus, which is a sub group of the Canaanites. And this place was right between Judea and Benjamin, and it was neutral. So Jerusalem was chosen for its neutrality. Okay, it was also very well fortified and a lot of other stories I don't want to get into, but we have one reason that's political. 4,000 years ago, it's believed according to Judaism that Abraham took his son Isaac and almost slaughtered him on a mountain called Mount Moriah. By the way, there's a different tradition for the Muslims where Abraham almost did the same thing to Ishmael in Mecca, in the Kaaba, but we'll talk about that later on when we overlook the Golden Dome. So back to our story. Jerusalem was chosen for a political reason and a religious reason. And surprisingly enough, until today, our struggles in Jerusalem are political and religious. So the tone was kind of set 4,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. So that is the beginning of Jerusalem. So let's go speed dial to all the different periods of Jerusalem. Here we have our timeline. I did this timeline for my exam in 1999. It still existed. And the good thing is, you know how you sweat? It hides the sweat. So you can lift your arm all the way high and it's safe. Okay? So we spoke about the biblical King David. We also have groups with families who relate to the group. Do you remember stories from the Bible? Moses, David, yeah, great. Okay. And then the land of Israel was always in between two massive empires, Mesopotamia and Egypt. So this was a place of trade. People go through here. Things happen over here. Just so you can understand why Jerusalem is so filled with archaeology and history. But you know, the Israelites were very rebellious people, and if you want to rebel against a big empire, you know, in the ancient East, all you have to do is not pay a tax. So the taxes were stopped paying, the Babylonians come, and they're like, you guys are out of here, we're destroying your temple. So the destruction of the first temple. Let's go on. Hellenistic, the Greeks come, Alexander the Great comes here. The year is, what year, tell me? Ballpark, 322. And with him he brings a whole new notion of Hellenism. It was kind of like modernity for them at that time. You know, democracy, philosophy, and the Jews had a problem. They were like, oh my God, I want to do all this stuff, but I'm a Jew, but I can't do it. So then there's a very big story that's called Hanukkah. Okay, those menorahs that you see that the Jewish people have sometimes around the time of Christmas. Okay, that's Hasmonean period. That's their family name of the Maccabees. Okay, so they take over for like 80 years, and then the Romans come here. Now the Romans we're going to talk about a lot. Half of the city is all Roman. To connect it to you, we have Jesus. We have Herod. We have so many figures that we're going to see in the Roman period, and we're going to go through. The difference between the Roman period and the Byzantine period is that the Roman period at some point decided to become Christian. And so all of a sudden Jerusalem is filled with crosses and churches and domes, and there's a different environment. Jerusalem is all of a sudden Christian. But then the Muslims come and they want to redeem Jerusalem from Christians. And so the Muslims come here with their own beliefs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And then all of a sudden we have mosques. So Jerusalem is filled with mosques and different kinds of domes. And then the Crusaders come and they want to take over Jerusalem from the Muslims. So they come and they, you know, build churches again. And then the Muslims come and they kind of build mosques again. So you get the point. You know, we're going to go through a city. And then the Ottoman period, which this wall that we're looking at right now, okay, open brackets, you have to point at something, right? And so I finally got to the point where I'm pointing at something. These are the walls that were built in 1538, okay? They exist for hundreds of years. Now think about what walls are. They hug something that's super important and protecting from something from outside. There were always walls around Jerusalem. Almost all these periods of times have walls that were destroyed and rebuilt. So we're going into the city of the walls from only 500 years ago, but imagine how many walls we had in the past. And then we have the British Mandate, World War I, the British and the French win. They take all the map of the Middle East and they slice it up like cake. The countries didn't come out too successful because, you know, they didn't notice they're friends, not friends. They just kind of sliced it up. And Israel was part of that story until it got independence in 1948. It's very complicated, but this in a nutshell is 3,000 years of history and what we're going to see. Now, unfortunately, thank you, unfortunately, Jerusalem, the old city, it's not organized in a way where we're like, oh yay, we're going to go through the biblical period and here's the Babylonian and here's the, it's all kind of on top of each other. I mean, these rocks have been used in different buildings in so many places. So on our tour, I encourage you to open your eyes to see the different people. We're in 1 square kilometer. It's a very small area. 40,000 people live within it. And we have so many different streams and sects and people. So open your eyes and see what you see. And I encourage you to ask me questions of who are these people and why are they wearing this? Don't be shy. In Israel, there's no such thing as a stupid question. Everybody asks questions. So we're going to get started into our tour. So that's one way to introduce Jerusalem. Everybody has to do their own thing.